Hello friends, this video is about the best layering you can do for your attack marches. And I would be covering the ground, calves and archers, all of these three attack marches. And I believe guys, many of you must have already watched my small layers video, how exactly small layers are making the impact within the March versus March scenario, right? But again guys, those small layers definitely do takes the lot of the troops if you putting into the all four troop types from top to bottom, right? And many of you might not like or might not understand how exactly those small layer is actually making the impact. So in this particular video guys, I'm going to deliver the different types of layering. Type 1 layering for the player who do not want to put any good quantity within the small layer but still wants to have the good outcome. And the type 2 and 3 layering in which I will specify how exactly or more specifically you can use those small layers to have the better outcome. So guys, let's quickly start it firstly from the type 1 layering. Now guys, in type 1 layering, let's firstly check it out the ground march. And I'm taking the example of the 2.1 million plus march size that is available at the K37 with junior march size buff, right? And defining all of these layer according to the 2.1 million march size, right? So firstly guys, as we are talking about the ground mass, so firstly let's speak about the how to decide what quantity you should put it in the big layers, right? So suppose guys, if in case you have the T14 as a highest tier, then I will suggest that you go ahead with the three big layers. And out of the three layers guys, I will suggest that you divide maximum troops within the two layers only, T14 and T13 for the ground. And out of these two layers, maximum troops, I will say guys, that you put it into the highest tier layer, that is the T14 for your ground march guys. And suppose guys, if in case you have the T15, then you can go ahead with the four big layers where maximum number of the troops guys, I will say you divide in between the T15, T14 and T13 and some of the troops within the T12. And again, guys, let me clearly specify one thing, that there is no such thing as if you will proceed with the that kind of the layering, you will have the better outcome in the each and every scenario. There is no such thing as common layering that will work in each and every scenario and will give you the best outcome, right? According to the different scenario, if you do the different layering, that might give you the better result, right? But on a secure side, if in case you are new to the PvP and do not understand on the basis of situation how you can change your layers, then I will suggest that you can go ahead with the that particular one only what I'm showing in this particular image, right? And on the basis of your mark size, you divide quantity on your layers guys, right? This is according to 2.1 million plus. If you have the 1.7 million, then divide accordingly. If you have the 3 million, divide accordingly. If you have the 6 million mark size, then divide accordingly from the T15 to T12, right? Now guys, let's proceed to the other layering part, right? These small layers, right? Now guys, according to the 2.1 million plus mark size around K37, K36, K38 and even K39, the maximum quantity that I have seen the player are doing within the small layers are the 10k, and even very few of one, otherwise majority of player are not doing anywhere near 10k within the small layers, right? So whoever is around this particular layer, I will suggest that on your ground march from top to bottom at least put up the 10k layers, right? Where you can see that in the three more layers I have put it up the more quantity, and simply the reason is why, because I would like to have the at least 5 to 6 little bigger or decent layers and then the 10k top to bottom. And why we are doing all of these layers from top to bottom is guys just simply for the one simple reason: whenever my ground march is going against the archer march, so firstly my ground layer will going to hit the enemy ground layers first, right? So I want all of these layers to quickly clear the ground layers instantly and move to the calf layer, and again instantly clear the calf layer within the as many less number of round as possible, and quickly move to the archers that we need to kill, right? And this is the reason guys why I'm layering it down till the bottom, so that from one layer to another layer should be the as easy as possible. And this is the only reason why we need to layer it down till the bottom, whatever the march we are using, right? Suppose this is the ground march, so I'm going to layer it down till the bottom, you know, so that I can move from the one whole layer to another layer within the as many less number of round as possible, right? Because suppose guys, if I do not do all of these layers, suppose we'll put up the only 1k layers, and other player is having the 10k layer, then the huge load would gonna be there on these big layers, right? And they will start taking the turns on those small layers that I literally do not want, right? So that's why guys, in this type of type 1 layering, whatever the march you are using, you have to layer it down till the bottom. And rest for all the troops, you can put up the 1k quantity from top to bottom, as right now you can see it. So this is regarding the ground march. Now let's proceed to the other march, that is the calves march. Now guys, let's speak about the calves march, again the type 1 layering. So let's speak about these big layers. So guys, why I'm doing exactly the same as ground layers, the higher quantity within the T14. The reason behind this guys is what? Because guys, you would be using the calves march against the ground march, to counter the ground march, right? And in a ground march, guys, maximum player within the game will gonna use their higher tier as a big layer, right? So if they are coming with the biggest defense and HP, then we also should proceed with the biggest highest tier layer to have the as much attack as possible. So this is the reason, guys, for caps you also proceed with the big layer for the higher tier layer, right? And again, guys, you have to layer it down till the bottom, as I mentioned within the ground march. But again guys, let me clearly inform you the one thing: in the caps versus ground scenario as such, these layer have almost to no role, right? And the reason is why, because our big layer of the caps will directly going to hit big layer of ground troops, right? So these layer have no role at all. But simply the reason why I'm asking you to put all of these layer from top to bottom, because there are so many scenarios within the game and I cannot speak about all the scenario, and it's gonna be the extremely useful. Now guys, let's proceed to the other march setup, that is the archer march, guys. Now guys, this is the type 1 layering for the archer march, guys. Here I'm putting up the some lower quantity within the T14, but the big quantity within the T13, guys. As such, guys, this is not the mandate thing that you have to do exactly the same. You want, you can put the big quantity within the T14 and the 700k within the T13, guys, and the some little quantity within the T12, right? But those who are the very good buff player, if those player want, they can even go ahead with the big layer within the T12 as well. Otherwise, anyone with the average buffs or the normal buffs, I will suggest you at least go ahead with the T13 as a big layer or the T14 as a big layer, right? And apart from it, guys, we have to do exactly the same, layer it down till the bottom, whatever the attack march we are using. Just remember that we have to layer it down till the bottom, guys, right? But again guys, let me clearly specify again, within the archer march, even if you put it down the 1k layers top to bottom, as such there is no issue at all. And why? Because again guys, most of the time you would be using your archer march to counter the calves march, right? And these layers will directly going to hit the calves big layers, right, without going through any layer at all, right? So as long as you have the good buff archer march, they will for sure take it out the enemy calves march, right? So these row layers almost have no role at all in terms of killing the enemy calves march, right? But still again guys, you must and should do it from top to bottom, right? Because there are so many scenarios within the game, and it would be extremely helpful if you want to proceed from the one layer to another layer as quickly as possible. And this is what you will know within the type 2 layering, guys, right? Now guys, let's quickly proceed to the type 2 layering. Now guys, till right now this was about the type 1 layering, right? And in the end, what you have to do, whatever the attack march you are using, after describing your big layers, layer it down, till the bottom, right? Whatever the attack march you are using, and rest you can do the simply the 1k within the type 1 layering. Now guys, let's speak about the type 2 layering that I will suggest to the players, those who have the decent buff, or you think that maximum of the time you would be going against the player who would be having the some sort of the more buff as compared to you, right? So now let's speak about the type 2 layering. Now guys, again within the type 2 2 layering, let's start from the ground march, and again I'm taking the example of the 2.1 million plus march size. So guys, in the type 2 layering for the ground, you have to do exactly the same as whatever we were doing within the type 1 layering. But the one thing that we need to add on is the archer layer. The 10k is what that you can add within the archer layer, guys, right? And again guys, this is according to the 2.1 million plus march size. If suppose you are the 6 million, 7 million march size player, then you have to do the things according to your march size, right? This is what guys you have to add within the type 2 layering. Now let's speak about guys why I'm adding these archer layers, guys. Again guys, while hitting the keep, even the 1k and 10k layers will hardly going to make any difference, right? But in the March versus March scenario, these things actually makes the difference. Most of the times, again guys, you would be using your ground march against the archer march. So we are putting all of this layer, why? So that my ground layer can kill the ground layers within the archer layer as quickly as possible within the as many less round as possible. And these 10k layer are also there to help our ground march in clearing the some of those caps layer as well, because archer directly target the cap, so that my ground can directly or easily reach the main archer big layers, right? So this is the reason guys why I'm adding these 10k layers as well. Now even if this 10k layer do not help us out in clearing those caps layer, it doesn't matter guys, right? Because guys, we all do know that if ground has to kill the archer, then it has to go through the ground layer, caps layer, and then it is the archer. And guys, we have to remember that same goes for the archers as well, because if archer has to kill the ground, then archer firstly need to kill all the caps layer, then all the archer layer, then it will proceed to the ground layer. So if we have the 10k layer from top to bottom, then it will delay the archer attack in reaching our ground layer, guys. So within the type 2 layering guys, you can proceed with the extra 10k layer for the archer as well from top to bottom. Now let me add for the type 3 layering as well. In the type 3 layering guys, you can put up the caps layers as well, but the reason why I'm not putting up, because it would be the unnecessary loss of the huge quantity of troops, so I'm trying to minimize this stuff, right? And I believe that even if you're doing these layer top to bottom, even if you're going against the some higher buff archer marks, still things should not be the much difficult for you, right? But again guys, now let me specify one thing, that players those who doing the type 1 layering for the archer marks, then things might not be as easy for us, right? And simply the reason is why, because those archer layer from top to bottom instantly kill this caps layer and will proceed to the archer layer, where even the all of these layer would be gone even instantly. So against the player those who doing the type 1 layering, maybe your ground march might not have the much benefits, right? But against the player those who doing the 1k layering, we have the extremely huge advantage, because now the archer march will gonna struggle even in terms of clearing this 10k layers and in reaching the our ground troops, while we can instantly clear all those ground layer and even the caps layer and will easily reach the archer troop, right? So this is the reason why guys why I'm putting up these kind of the layering, right? Now let's proceed to the caps march guys within the type 2 layering. Now with this is the type 2 layering for the caps march guys. You will see guys, it is almost as same as type 1 layering of caps march. The only difference is what we are adding the 10k layer for ground from top to bottom guys. And again guys, why we're doing it? So firstly guys, mostly you're using the caps march against the ground march. So whenever you're using caps march against the ground march, we have to understand one thing, that the caps as such do not make the direct hit on the ground big layers. Firstly, guys, it's always the ground versus ground layer, right? So suppose, guys, that ground march is having the 1k layer from top to bottom, as most of the player within the one is already doing it. Then what will happen, that in the ground versus ground scenario, those 1k layer would be unable to clear these layer, and those big layer of grounds have to take turn in all of these layer in order to clear our ground layer. So in that meanwhile, our big layer of calves would be having the huge advantage, because they would be able to do the early start on the ground big layers, right? And will be able to do the huge damage on the ground big layers, and we would be able to clear the ground march as easily as possible, right? So even if with the some difference you hitting any higher ground march, we would be having the less difficulty. So that is why, guys, I'm using the 10k layer for ground from top to bottom. But again, guys, let me clearly specify one thing. All those players who doing the type 1 layering for ground, as I mentioned, then we would be having almost to no advantage at all. And again, for archer and siege, guys, you can proceed with the 1k layers, right? And in the type 3 layering, guys, if you want, you can put up the some quantity within the archer layer as well. That would be helpful in the some scenario. But again, if in case you do not want, because again it would be the loss of troops from your march size, then you can proceed with the that kind of the layering only. And again, guys, as I have added these 10k layers, and I think I forgot to rectify the true quantity in these big layers. But just understand the logics, guys, and rest you can do by your own, right? Now let's proceed to the archer layer, guys. Now, guys, this is the type 2 layering for archers. Archer layer, you can say it is almost the same as the type 1 layering. But what I have done, I have added the 5k layers for the calves and the 5k layer for the ground. If I would be putting up the 10k layers, guys, it would be the huge loss of the troops within the within our march size, right? So that's why I'm proceeding with the 5k layers for the calves and ground. And even right now within the game, almost to no player is doing the 10k layers for caps and ground around this particular march size, because it would be the huge quantity of troop loss, from the total march size. And again, guys, why to have these kind of the layering? To make the things as difficult as possible, so that low level player, even with the ground troop or ground march, should not be able to counter your archer march, or should be having the as much as difficulty as possible, right? So that's why, guys, I'm putting up these layers within the archer march within the type 2 layering, right? And why I'm not putting up the siege quantity, guys, because I'm pretty sure many of you know, even the siege is also counter the archers. Siege is also good against the archer, right? Because, guys, in the march versus march scenario, it would be very rare scenario where people would be trying to counter your archer with the siege march, right? Maximum of the time it would gonna be the ground march only, right? And while hitting any cave where at least the 500k layers are there from top to bottom, or millions of layers are there from top to bottom, putting any quantity here, would be almost to no beneficial. But still, guys, if in case you want to put the quantity over here, definitely you can put it up within the type 3 layering, guys, right? But within the type 2 layering, you can proceed with these layers only. So this was about the, guys, type 1 and type 2 layering, and within the type 3 layering, guys, you just have to add the one more layer, as I mentioned in the all of those marches, right? Now, guys, let's speak about who should do the type 1 layering and who should do the type 2 layering. Guys, if in case you are the good buff player, you having the great buff, then I will say the type 1 layering is pretty much sufficient with you. In the most of this scenario, you are pretty much safe with the type 1 layering only. And now who should use the type 2 layering, guys? Guys, I don't have the that great buff. I know maximum of the time, even with the so many players who are around the same level, they could be having the better buff than me, right? So I always proceed with the type 2 layering. Or even if you have the good buff, but still you think that you going against the, the those player who having the great buff, then still I will say you proceed with the type 2 layering. And again, those who have the much bigger march size, if in case you want, you can do the type 3 layering as well. Otherwise, type 1, type 2 is, I think, the sufficient on the basis of whatever your buffs are. Now, apart from it, guys, let me mention the one more thing, that in which scenario this layering is having the almost to no effect at all. In the ground versus ground scenario, guys, whatever the quantity is there in the small layer have no meaning at all, right? In the siege versus siege scenario, guys, those small layer is having the no meaning at all, right? And even in the archer versus archer scenario, 95% of the time there would not be the much merit. But guys, in the archer versus archer scenario, there is a different concept exists that I might speak in the some different video, because that's the totally and overall different thing. So I think, guys, yep, this is it for this particular video, and we'll see you all in the next video. And thanks for watching, and bye bye for now.